Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there are many, many podcasts you could choose from, so that you choose us is not a small thing. Thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks, as always, for your written reviews at Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want to tell you about my friend in Cincinnati named John Ruhlman. Now, he runs a company called U.S. Medical Plan. And John has been a sponsor of mine and a friend of mine for a long while. And he has gotten calls from this audience, including calls from my own family, calls from colleagues and friends of mine who have shopped with him their current health insurance plan. And he has saved friends and family thousands of dollars, literally. Let me give you a for example. I have a friend who bought private health insurance for his family. His daughter had some special health needs that cost him quite a bit of money a month to get premiums covered for all of them. John found him identical coverage and saved him $2,000 a month. That's jaw-dropping money. My parents called John for a supplemental health insurance plan for their Medicare. John saved them $400 a month. Now, every nickel is precious, particularly when you're sitting on an income that you've got to count on for the rest of your days and you're counting your change. $400 is a lot of money. All right, so that's what John can do for you. Or maybe if you have no health insurance at all and you think it's too expensive, I can't afford it right now. He has over 100 different private health insurance companies all over the country that he shops and compares so that he gets you the best rates and never cheats you on coverage, by the way. It doesn't mean it's some scant coverage. Great rates, great coverage. Let John and his team at usmedicalplan.com go to work for you today. You can also call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. Well, hey, good morning to you. Welcome in on this Thursday edition of the Chris Stigall Show. Live look at Washington, D.C. today, where is a gloomy-looking start to the morning because there is some extraordinary shocking and sad news coming out of Washington, D.C., and it is not anything to do with politics. It has everything to do with terrorism, and it has everything to do with this new anti-Jewish virulent strain of anti-Semitism and, frankly, terrorism that is brewing in this country that needs to be talked about, needs to be dealt with, needs to be swiftly and severely punished. 2 Israeli embassy staffers were killed in a shooting near a Jewish museum in Washington last night, and the man who shot them, when arrested, was shouting, "Free Palestine." Fatally shot 2 Israel embassy staffers late Wednesday near the Jewish museum in downtown Washington. Shooting took place just after 9 o'clock last night on the East Coast, the corner of 3rd and F Street in Northwest. Or F Street Northwest in Washington, I should say. That's the Lillian and Albert Small Capital Jewish Museum, which focuses on Jewish life in the National Capital Region. According to its website, police officers found a man and a woman suffering life-threatening gunshot wounds. Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, said it appeared to be an act of targeted violence. Police believe the shooting was committed by a single suspect, identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago. Now, that is an interesting name. Not that we should ever judge books by their covers, and of course we'll learn more about Mr. Rodriguez in due course, but a 30-year-old from Chicago with the last name Rodriguez, that doesn't typically fit what you'd think, I don't know, someone who would assassinate Jewish people just for being Jewish would necessarily, and shouting "Free Palestine," that doesn't fit maybe what you would traditionally think would be a profile, does it? Now, again, I'm only using my reasoning skills here. I have no facts on this story, so I'm just purely speculating here. But this strikes me as a young person, much like the young man that shot the health insurance CEO in cold blood in the early morning hours in Manhattan in the back. This feels, if I'm to guess, and I'm purely speculating, I'm purely guessing, he paced outside the museum before approaching 4 people with a handgun and opening fire. He was arrested when he went inside the museum, told officers where he had discarded the gun, and implied that he had committed the shooting. He chanted "Free Palestine" while being taken into custody. The victims of the attack identified as Sarah Lynn Milgram and her partner Yaron Lishinsky, who both worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington. Now, here again, a 30-year-old named Elias Rodriguez, who was pacing outside the museum before he walked up to 4 people with a handgun and opened fire, and then immediately confessed to the crime. Does that suggest these people were targeted, that he knew exactly who he was going after, that he had a relationship with these people? Seems that way. I mean, if he's clearly trying to make some kind of statement by killing Jewish people, shouting "Free Palestine," he knew he was killing Jews. I assume that you can't just willy-nilly assume everybody coming out of the Jewish center here, the Jewish museum, is Jewish. So if it's a target attack on Jews, you got to know who they are. So I would assume that this Mr. Rodriguez knew who these people were. That would be my first guess. Second, it looks to be that they are, I mean, from their picture anyway, I don't know, they look to be contemporaries in age. I would guess that these people, based on their picture, now the late Lynn Milgram and Yaron Lishinsky, they appear to be in their late 20s, young people for sure. They appear to be in their late 20s, early 30s at best. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is a homegrown radical. He is not a non-American. This is a young, radicalized anti-Semite who is undoubtedly, I bet we will find, a participant in these marches and chants and disruptions and hectoring of Jewish students on college campuses, for instance. I bet that's where he learned this stuff. I bet that's... what am I saying? I'm saying we're breeding these people now. This is not the stuff that's imported through our broken immigration system. I'm sorry to say that if I'm to guess, and look, I hope I'm wrong, but I have a funny feeling I'm not, 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez, who assassinated 2 Jews in cold blood, knew exactly who he was going after, probably knew who they were, and is probably a homegrown anti-Semite. And wanted to go as a martyr, because don't forget, Islamists, and this is so important to remember, and I don't think we spend nearly enough time talking about this here. There are some other stories that kind of go along with this theme today, nicely, actually. Islamists believe that if you don't convert to Islam, you're to die, and that's just it. You do know that, right? Now, that is not the position of all Muslims. I always have to say that because people always misinterpret this commentary, but it's important that we say it, and it's important that we say this regularly. Islamo-supremacists, and that is increasingly who are gaining voice and stature and status in the Democrat Party, and culturally and socially. It is not the moderate Muslim, ladies and gentlemen, that is gaining strength in the United States and in the streets. It is the radical jihadist. It is the Islamo-fascist supremacist. It is the movement that says, convert or be killed. And when it comes to Jews, they got to be wiped off the map. That's not even a question. I'm not even sure they give Jewish people the opportunity to convert. I think just by virtue of your existence, you're to be annihilated. And we're breeding this. We're breeding this in our classrooms. We're breeding this on our college campuses. And this is becoming the stuff. And by the way, when you do what Mr. Rodriguez did last night in cold blood from Chicago, killed 2 Jews in broad daylight, when you do that, he believes now he's a martyr. And I hate saying this, but I suspect there are probably corners of the online world this morning, if you wanted to go searching in that muck, I'll bet you there are people that are celebrating Mr. Rodriguez domestically right now, who do, in fact, think he's a hero. Much like there are many people who celebrate the fact that they think that the guy who shot the United Healthcare CEO is a hero and celebrate him. They're making a Broadway play about him. It's a death cult. The Democrat Party is a death cult anyway. Islamism, Islamofascism, Islamic supremism, that goes hand in glove with death cult stuff. It makes total sense that Islamism feels at home with the Democrat Party. It makes total sense that Democrats cheer and embrace the assassination of healthcare CEOs and Jewish people in the street. It makes total sense that this would be a homegrown, radicalized 30-year-old who thinks he's done a service, a public service, by murdering a couple of Israel natives here working for the Israeli embassy. They're a beautiful young couple too. It's not that if they were of any age or no matter what they looked like, this is not horrible. Donald Trump issued a statement on social media last night. These horrible killings, based obviously on anti-Semitism, must end now. Hatred and radicalism have no place in the United States. Condolences to their families and the victims. So sad that such things can happen. God bless you all, he wrote. Now, it's interesting that on this very same day, and it's just, I guess we'll call it bad timing, Claire Shipman. Who is Claire Shipman? Claire Shipman used to work for ABC News. I forget who she's married to. I feel like she's married to somebody inside journalism today, Fast Eddie. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Neither here nor there. She was a correspondent for ABC News for a good many years, and now she serves as the acting president of the University of Columbia. And yesterday, just a few hours really before this guy decided to assassinate a couple of Jews in the streets of Washington, D.C., Claire Shipman, according to the New York Post, chose to stoke the flames of this anti-Semitism by acknowledging the arrested ex-grad student Mohammed Khalil at the school's chaotic graduation, they write. Hordes of graduating students and the riled-up audience began chanting Khalil's name and nearly booed Shipman off the stage throughout her remarks. Shipman told the crowd of nearly 37,000, "We firmly believe that our international students have the same rights to freedom of speech as everyone else, and they should not be targeted by the government for exercising their right. I know many in our community are mourning the absence of our graduate, Mahmoud Khalil." That is the former ABC News reporter, now acting president of Columbia, says that she knows many in the crowd at the commencement ceremony are mourning the absence of Mahmoud Khalil, the anti-Semite, who undoubtedly gave rise to and is a peer of and probably would cheer Mr. Rodriguez, age 30, of Chicago. They're birds of a feather. A Michigan Senate candidate endorsed by Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna of California will appear at a major Islamist convention this weekend with anti-Israeli speakers who have called for the destruction of Israel, praising Hamas leaders and expressing euphoria over the October 7th Hamas attack. I don't have anything to add. Your witness, counselor. Good morning and welcome back to the Stigall Show. Glad to have you along. Our telephone number, 855-STIGALL. As we speak, literally as we're speaking, Mike Johnson is on the House floor speaking, the Speaker of the House. Maybe a vote on the big, beautiful bill this morning. So we wanted to join whatever it is Johnson's saying live on the floor because we get a rare opportunity to do that at this time of day. Oh, okay, somebody else is now on the floor talking. Let's just join whatever's going on the House floor and see what's it all about. I think it's about the big, beautiful bill. Here we go.
The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to provide for reconciliation pursuant to Title II of House Concurrent Resolution 14.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sorry. For what purposes, the gentlelady from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Hand of Massachusetts moves to recommit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on the Budget.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to
Whole lot of parliamentary rigmarole that I couldn't begin to try to parse and understand with you, so I'm not going to bother. But anyway, Mike Johnson was speaking just a little while ago. Unfortunately, it was during the break, naturally. So as soon as we come back, Mike Johnson wrapped it up, and now we go to all that gibberish that nobody cares about. So let me tell you what happened overnight, and if something important happens, we'll monitor it and let you know. House Republicans finalizing their changes to the tax and spending bill to appease warring party wings, reports the Wall Street Journal. Changes include accelerating Medicaid work requirements and ending many energy tax credits by 2028. The bill would extend expiring tax cuts, create new ones, and increase spending for border security and defense. Now, yesterday on this show, if you were with us or if you heard it yesterday, and I'm glad that you do, watch us on the Salem News Channel. Get the app. Hope you will. If you miss any part of any show, you can always get the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Easy to do. Hope you will. I go back and listen to my entire conversation with a couple of different members of Congress. One, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said something really remarkable. And do we have that from yesterday, guys? I'm sorry. I asked for that one last night. Okay, we do. Could you first give me Marjorie Taylor Greene here and what she said to me about the big, beautiful bill that might have surprised. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard it said quite this way. Now, keep in mind, she chairs the DOJ committee in the House. And I was rather taken aback by this declaration from Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday on the show. Listen.
What the big, beautiful bill does not do is it does not pass any DOJ cuts, which is upsetting for probably everyone. However, it's not germane to the reconciliation bill, which is the big, beautiful bill. DOJ cuts have to be done separately. And I've been very vocal with the Speaker, with the White House, who is also controlling the DOJ cuts and rescissions. I've been very vocal that I think DOJ cuts is something we should vote on every single day, because they reduce the size and scope of the federal government and reduce spending. And I believe in being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So I can tell you the big, beautiful bill is a great bill. It has a lot of wonderful things in it, but it does not cut spending. It actually spends money on Trump administration priorities and Trump campaign promises.
Fascinating. Did that surprise you yesterday? I didn't have a lot of time to ruminate on that. That happened late in the show, but boy, did it get a lot of reaction on social media when I posted it yesterday.
It did. That actually shocked me, Chris. I was floored at the moment because, I mean, how many people have come up to you and said, like, well, we're not making the DOJ cuts permanent. How are they going to make the DOJ cuts permanent? And it wasn't really explained to us quite that way, that this is not for that, this big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, like she said it in a way that was like you and I should have never expected that would have been the case. And I'm not mad at her. I mean, she was just the messenger, but she effectively said this is not germane. This bill, if you thought it had anything to do with what we're finding in DOJ, you've been misled. And I was thinking to myself, well, I guess I have been, or maybe I allowed myself to think that, or maybe we all allowed ourselves to think that. I don't know. And then Representative Kustoff came here to explain that, in fact, the Social Security benefit that's going to be in this bill is not exactly an elimination at all. It's a bit of a deduction come tax time for anybody that draws about $75K, I think, individually, or $150 together as a couple. You get about a $4,000 per head tax deduction. So that is not no tax on Social Security. And that made a lot of you mad yesterday, too. Look, I'm just relaying to you your reaction. I'm not telling you how to feel about this, but they're going to vote on this today, and it looks like they've got the votes. We'll get into more detail on this in just a minute. But great to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in. The House is, as we speak, voting on the big, beautiful bill. We are trying to make contact with some House members, perhaps if they're willing to come on. It seems most of them are kind of climbing up until this vote is over with. This was clearly important to them that whatever they got negotiated and wrangled happened. I mean, there was talk that they were going to vote last night. Here's what I think I know is going on. The particulars of this bill that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mr. Well, I tell you what. Give me just a second here, and I'm not going to lose my place. I promise I'm not going to lose my place. But I do want to tell you very briefly about something that's actually far more significant. And that is a campaign, an ongoing campaign that we're going to be doing here through the rest of May and an early part of June called Angel Tree and the Angel Tree Camp. And I don't know if you're familiar with the program, but this is the kind of thing that actually gives me hope and the kind of thing that I'm actually very, very proud to be associated with. Sifting through the muck and the mire of politics and the news on any given day is kind of, frankly, it's gross and frustrating and maddening. But, the real action that you and I can take for good, you get up every day and you go to work, if in fact you do, and you think to yourself, what good am I doing? Am I working toward a real goal, a real purpose? If you're a Christian, are you trying to further the kingdom, Jesus' kingdom? The answer when you do work with people like Angel Tree Camp is yes, you are. And this year, as they have in the past years with the Salem Media Group, they've partnered with this show and they've asked me to ask of you, and I never want to make anybody in this audience feel any kind of pressure or guilt. I don't like badgering you about these things because you're very generous on your own, and so I'm not going to hit you over the head about this stuff, but I'm going to tell you that now that we're coming up on Memorial Day weekend and a lot of us are looking forward to cookouts and hanging out, long weekend, family picnics and that sort of thing, when you're talking about kids who have incarcerated parents and they're in rough neighborhoods already, this is not a summer they're looking forward to. This is a summer where they're often plunged into gang activity and drug activity. And you and I actually have the power to get involved and change that. And that's why I love partnering with Angel Tree, because it's something positive that we can do no matter how frustrated we get with the news cycle. Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Camp program is back with us this year, and they've asked me to ask you if you can help us get 455 kids to summer camp this year. How do we do that? That number, they've arrived on that number, but they've talked with myself and my other colleagues on the Salem Network, and we've split these campers out amongst the shows, and they've said, Chris, can you ask the audience if we can get 455 campers to camp this year? I said, I'm gonna do my best, and you have been an unbelievably generous audience already this year, and so I'm going to invite you again to be a part of this annual effort and send deserving children with a mom or a dad who are incarcerated, and it's, of course, no fault of the children's. This is an opportunity to send them for fresh air and fun and gospel-centered activity. It's Angel Tree Camp, and it will be a location nearest to their home. Prisoners' kids, as you know, some of the most vulnerable out there. And so there's a banner up at chrisstigall.com right now. And if you go to my website, chrisstigall.com, you will see the banner right at the top of my page. And when you click on it, you can become one of the first in this audience. There have been about 25 of you so far, and look, I'm trying to get to 455, so we've got a bit of a hill to climb together. The gift of $200 is what makes it possible for one camper to go for a whole week. It's $200 for a whole week. Now, for a lot of us, I understand $200 is just not an achievable thing, which is why I never want to make anybody feel like, well, you either give $200 or give nothing. That's not what I'm talking about. If you give 10, 5, it doesn't matter to me. If you're able to give to this campaign, you're giving toward this incredibly worthy cause, giving hope, exposing these children to Jesus. It is the most important thing I believe we can do for our fellow citizens, is try to expose them to the gospel. And if you can plant a seed on a child's heart in a troubled area, this is why we do what we do here at Salem, and I'm thrilled to be a small part of it with your help. All right? So please, if you can do 200 today, that's awesome. That's one more kid to camp. Whatever you can do, all right? It's the Angel Tree Camp, and you can go to chrisstigall.com and click on that banner. It says, make a difference in the lives of prisoners' children. Or, here's the number. You can call 888-206-2794. They're standing by right now. 888-206-2794. And thank you for your help. All right, now back to what's going on at the House. We had a representative on from Tennessee yesterday. We had Marjorie Taylor Greene on yesterday, and both of them sort of relayed to us information that, Fast Eddie, I don't know how else to say it, it really ticked people off. I'm not taking exception with the members themselves. I was grateful that they made themselves available to the show. I was grateful that they were here and they were honest. Most of you did not like what they had to say. Is that a fair assessment, Fast Eddie?
110%. Yeah, they didn't like it.
Yeah.
No.
I don't want to put the team on the spot here. Do we have the other congressman as well? We do have that clip from yesterday where he talks specifically about Social Security. This is a lengthier explanation, but those of you who were not with us, I wanted you to hear again what he had to say about the Social Security issue. Take a listen.
So, two of the three things did. There is no tax on tips. There is no tax on overtime. For the Social Security beneficiaries, what we needed to do, because reconciliation that the Senate uses is so wonky, we gave a $4,000 tax deduction to those seniors making, I believe, less than $75,000. In other words, because of reconciliation, we couldn't completely remove taxes on Social Security because of the Senate process, but we did what we thought was the next best thing, and that was to give that $4,000 of relief.
Okay. This is really, Congressman, this is really important because I know I'm going to get the angry emails, and I'm not picking on you. I just want everybody to understand and explain this. You're saying the rules of the Senate getting this big beautiful pass preclude you guys from just uniformly saying no more taxes on Social Security. You aren't physically able to do that in the House to get it through the Senate? Is that what you're saying?
We could procedurally, we could do anything in the House we want to do. It's the Senate rules that you run into issues, because remember, reconciliation, and so Chris, this is really wonky and in the weeds. But
I know.
Let me
I know.
Because I think people listening need to understand. In the House, when we take a vote, most votes are a simple majority. If we get 218 yeses, then the bill passes. In the Senate, most votes have to get past cloture. That's 60 votes. Now, the way that we get around it, or they can get around it, is through this process that you and I have been talking about called reconciliation. And we can use reconciliation this year in 2025 because Republicans won the trifecta in November. We won the White House with Donald Trump. We flipped the majority of the Senate from Democrat to Republican. We kept our majority in the House of Representatives. We're using reconciliation so that we can get past the 60 votes threshold in the Senate and just get to 51. But when you do that, they've got rules that it's called the Byrd Rule, B-Y-R-D, named after former Senator Robert Byrd. Everything that is used in reconciliation has to be budget-based. It has to go back to the budget. And their kind of weird and arcane rules prohibit you from doing anything with Social Security the way you described it in the reconciliation process. You can do it if you want to get 60 votes in the Senate, but you can't do that. So the next best thing.
You mean there aren't 60 votes for support for something like that? Is that what you mean?
I don't think so, because they hate Trump so much. The Democrats in the Senate don't want to give Trump a win on anything. You see that in his nominees and these straight line party votes. This bill, Chris, is I think it's going to be Donald Trump's legacy.
Okay, so that's Congressman Kustoff, who represents the 8th Congressional District of Tennessee. He was on with us yesterday, and that was his explanation. And so Fast Eddie, again, we were so busy yesterday, I didn't really have time to comb through this with you. A lot of you reached out about this, as well as the Marjorie Taylor Greene conversation that happened later in the show, where she said there will be no Doge cuts in this, and anybody who told you otherwise was misleading you. So those were two bits of information that happened in this show yesterday, Ed, that did not sit well with a good number of you who reached out to me. Having said all that, I sent out a newsletter yesterday at the Harumph Society where I said, even so, we still have to pass the big, beautiful bill, Ed.
Yes.
Disagree?
No, of course. Of course I don't disagree.
No,
we still have to pass it.
Did Kustoff's explanation there make you angry or help? Now, he's a House member. He's not a senator. He's just explaining, we could have put it in there, but if we go over to the Senate, Thune is already telling them, I can't get 60 senators. I'm going to need Democrats to do it. I can't get them to vote for this thing in full, which we would have to do. procedurally to get Social Security benefit taxes eliminated. We only need a simple majority through what's called reconciliation. But if you monkey around with something like Social Security, a different rule kicks in, and it's going to need a 60-vote threshold to do it. Again, these are stupid rules, but they are the rules of the Congress. And so Thune has already told these guys, if you say we're doing away with everything related to Social Security taxes, I got to go get 60 votes to get that through. And he's telling them he can't get it done. Now, here's the question, and somebody actually called the show yesterday with a good point. You telling me that the Republicans can't lay pressure on Democrats, box them in on this issue, and make them explain to the American people why they want to continue to levy taxes on Social Security? Do you think Thune is willing to risk the big, beautiful bill and gamble it all on trying to pressure Democrats to support going forward with eliminating tax on Social Security? That's the question.
Maybe in this instance for this bill, if they can't get it done and they're worried about it slowing down again, I feel like they have to move forward with what Rep. Kustoff said. Can the Republicans and Thune put pressure on the Democrats for no tax on Social Security? Absolutely. Do it through a real bill. Introduce a bill, then after the big, beautiful bill passes.
Much like they just did 2 days ago on tax on tips.
Yep.
That went through with Democrat support. It was actually introduced with the help of Democrats and went through without objection because the Democrats do not want to be, particularly those in places like Nevada where so much income is tied to gratuities. That went through, that sailed through. And so a lot of you saw that and said, well, then why the hell can't you do that with Social Security? Thune wasn't as confident. And so here we are teetering on the precipice of this thing. We got to get it through. Got to get the big, beautiful bill thing because we're talking about massive tax cuts across the board in this bill. This is game-changing economy stuff, codifying for good the Trump-era tax cuts. What they're saying is we can deal with those cuts. We can even deal with Social Security, but right now, in order to use reconciliation and just count on only Republicans and not have to go and get help from Democrats, the thing we've got to do is stick within the framework of this so that we can pass it through this process called reconciliation and we don't have to get the 60 votes. I know none of you care about this procedural Senate stuff. I know. It's a headache. It's a headache to try to explain. It's a headache to try to understand. You say, I don't care. We're out here hurting. We want more money in our pocket. These damn people are elected to represent us. Quit giving me rules of why you can't do this and can't do that. I completely hear you and understand why you feel that way. But this is the picture that they have painted for us. They're voting on it right now. It appears, the news that I have, they took some procedural votes last night, and it appears they're going to have the numbers to pass this big, beautiful bill out of the House. So we'll stay on top of this, continue to tell you what's in it as soon as we find out more, but I think they wanted to hurry this along because they don't want too many of you getting too upset and stymieing it. This is the Stigall Show. We are continuing to monitor what's going on the House floor this morning. They are voting, we think, on the big, beautiful bill. I think that's actually what they're doing. I think they may have passed it, or they say they have the votes already. Here's the story from Politico. House Republicans' big, beautiful bill one step closer to passage after clearing a key procedural hurdle last night that sets it up for a floor vote today. So there we are with the 209. Right now it's 209 Republicans say yay. 2 Republicans have said nay. Now, Republicans can only lose 4, if I'm doing my math correctly. 217 was a procedural vote they took yesterday. Republicans stayed overwhelmingly united on a test vote to advance the massive domestic policy measure shortly before 3 a.m. this morning, paving the way for a vote on final passage later in the day. It was a 217 to 212 vote, and they said in Politico last night, this bodes well for Johnson, who can't, with his razor-thin majority, afford more than a couple of GOP defections on a bill that isn't expected to garner any Democrat support. In the end, only one Republican joined all Democrats in voting against this procedural rule, and that was Thomas Massie. So there's been 2 Republican nay votes so far. You can assume one of them is Massey. Massey said, we are not just rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg. He said, if something is beautiful, you don't do it after midnight. I oppose this bill. That's Massey. Chip Roy of Texas, also vocal in his dissatisfaction with this bill and the surrounding negotiations, was not committed to a yes vote as of 3 o'clock in the morning, but he did vote on this procedural thing, yes. He said, we're still trying to figure out exactly what the timetable will be on a couple of things in the executive branch. The procedural vote came in a last-ditch flurry of negotiation that kicked off when Trump visited Capitol Hill Tuesday. So, the forward motion was smoothed by a 45-page amendment. There was a 45-page amendment offered last night that they voted on. 45 pages. Like, that's amazing. And adopted House rules packed with hand-tailored provisions to woo Republican holdouts. So it was stuff like changes including moving up the start date of Medicaid work requirements from January 2029 to December 31st, 2026. Isn't that amazing? Something like that. Work requirements for Medicaid. In the original Big Beautiful Bill, they set the deadline as you got to start working and proving you're working if you're on Medicaid and you're of able-bodied age. You've got to prove you're looking for work. And we're going to start making that a requirement in 2029, said the original bill, which is just amazing. It's amazing that we're even here. It's amazing that government even allows you to collect Medicaid without proving you're working, unless you're disabled. And so hardliners, which is really just sane Americans, said, I don't think we should wait around until 2029 to require people to go to work if they're able-bodied and on Medicaid. And so this 45-page amendment was offered last night, and they said, okay, how about the end of next year as our deadline? So we're still going to go a whole nother year and a half before people able-bodied have to prove they're looking for work if they're on Medicaid, but it's better than 2029, I guess. This is the kind of crazy stuff they're negotiating in the Big Beautiful Bill. We continue to monitor it here on the Salem News Channel and on great Salem radio stations all over the country. Sit tight.
Everybody talking about the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. Balance of Nature says, welcome to the party. They've been working hard, producing a vibrant nutritional supplement second to none for many, many years before it became fashionable. So many other people use chemicals and additives for their supplements, but Balance of Nature is made solely from whole food ingredients. And while other methods sacrifice nutritional quality for the sake of profits and volume, Balance of Nature, they use an advanced cold process, a vacuum cold process. It includes freeze-drying their fruits and vegetables into a fine powder, and so that allows them to retain as much nutritional value as possible. And they don't cut corners, for volume or other things, as maybe some other supplements do. Balance of Nature packs a real nutritional punch, and that's the whole reason to take Balance of Nature. Get the most nutrition for the sake of your good health. And if you use my name, Chris, as your promo code right now, you'll save 35% off your order, and they're even going to ship it to you for free. Plus, a money-back guarantee if you're not happy. Call them, 800-2468-751. Use the discount code Chris. Once again, don't forget the discount code Chris for that big 35% off savings plus free shipping. Order online, balanceofnature.com.
Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a three-dimensional x-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past had referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
Glad to have you along, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you in. on what is apparently going to be a very, very busy Thursday morning on the Chris Stigall Show. They're always busy, but it's seldom with news that's kind of popping and breaking live. It's generally, we're cleaning out the muck from the day prior or what have you. But this morning, you got the big, beautiful bill being voted on as we speak on the House floor. Sounds like it's headed to passage. And I know a number of you are particularly peeved about the Social Security thing. David emailed this morning. He said, Chris, I'm calling BS on that Social Security tax cut explanation. They could have but failed to separately pass a bill on Social Security tax cuts before the big, beautiful bill, similar to no tax on tips. Therefore, the explanation is BS. I assume, David, you're talking about what the congressman said on the show yesterday. Again, I don't mean to bore everybody to tears. Eddie made a great point. He said Trump just calls this the big, beautiful bill, and everybody starts calling it the big, beautiful bill. And I said that's because Trump is a masterful communicator. Trump knows how to cut through the clutter and talk directly to people. I was watching a fascinating Bill Maher, an old clip of Bill Maher's show with Scott Adams, and it was from some time back. And Scott Adams, who just this week, and we talked about him, sadly, is battling a similar form of prostate cancer as Joe Biden and says he doesn't have much time left. But Scott became so popular, yes, because of Dilbert, his cartoon, but he really became popular when he started kind of psychoanalyzing politics. And he really came onto the scene doing this during Trump's first run. And the thing Scott was so well explaining that nobody had really quite keyed in on was that when Trump would use different labels, it wasn't by accident. It wasn't just being childish. People always used to dismiss it as he has all these childish nicknames for people. And Adams used to say, no, it's actually not childish. I mean, you can call it that if you want, but it's very purposeful. He kind of shops them. Crooked Hillary. He would shop that. He does shop that. He actually, remember, he asks audiences at his live events, what do you think I should call her? Crooked? Or, I don't remember, he had another name for her once. He did that with Joe Biden, too. What do you like better? Do you like Sleepy Joe or do you like Crooked Joe? And he would take a vote, literally, in his live audiences. And people would say, crooked or whatever. And so he would keep using it. He shops these words. And what Scott's point is once it gets into the psychological makeup of someone, whether they know it or not, whether you know it or not, when he says little Marco, when he says Lion Ted, when he says things like Sleepy Joe or Jeb Bush needs a nap, Sleepy Jeb, Jeb's out napping. What that does is tell all of us in the back of our minds, whether we'll admit it or not, I think Jeb Bush is kind of lazy. I think Hillary Clinton's kind of questionable. She's not particularly warm. I don't trust her. Ted Cruz, he's talking. He must be lying. That stuff is subconscious. And Trump knows it, and it works. And so that's why he keeps using these things. So when he came up with one big, beautiful bill, well, it became the way everybody described it. And sure enough, in short order, everybody began talking about one big, beautiful bill as a great positive thing. Now, the ugliness of it, the sausage being made, that's a different matter. And all these House members have to get together to try to figure out what to put in it. And that's where a lot of us, I'll include myself in it, that's where a lot of us say, I don't know necessarily what's in it, but I trust that it's big and it's beautiful because Trump's called it that. And it does have great tax cuts in it. Great. So that's what they've been fighting about. What's in it? What's in it? What's in it? Well, it has officially passed. So Mike Johnson got it done again. No matter how he got it there, no matter what, Mike Johnson got it done. He's speaking right now, guys. I don't know if we carry that or not, but if we can pull that up, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, is speaking now that the House has passed this bill. We do not have it. Okay, so when we get it, we will join that. The House Republicans this morning have passed a sweeping bill full of President Trump's legislative priorities, marking a major win for Mike Johnson, kicking off what is expected to be a bitter battle in the Senate over achieving key parts of the White House's policy agenda. The chamber cleared the sprawling package in a 215 to 214 early morning vote. Whoa. 215 to 214. Gulp. And by the way, I think I'm right on this. You know, a Democrat representative just died yesterday. And if I'm doing the math on this correctly, that had he been present to vote on this thing, I'm not sure it would have happened, I think, if I'm doing my math right. But anyway, marathon meetings, intense negotiations throughout the night and into the morning that spanned both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. A series of last-minute changes to the bill were crucial in coalescing Republicans around the measure. In the end, there were just 2 Republicans. Okay. Reading this from the Hill this morning, folks. Sorry, this is just coming down as I'm talking here. 2 Republicans, Massey and Warren Davidson of Ohio, were no votes. And then House Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris voted present. Okay, so they lost 3 Republicans. The bill, titled One Big Beautiful Bill Act, adopted Trump's slogan for the measure. See? Again, back to what I was saying a minute ago. And the passage marks a massive victory for Mike Johnson, who successfully cajoled scores of Republican holdouts from hardline conservatives to vulnerable moderates to support the bill before the self-imposed Memorial Day deadline. Here's where Johnson is a lot smarter than maybe previous House speakers, for better or worse. He manages to get these people together, and when they act, they move swiftly. They don't lollygag around. So they get together, they take everybody's temperature, they give this guy a little, they give that gal a little, they horse trade behind closed doors, and then they immediately rush a vote. Because what they didn't want, they couldn't have the Marjorie Taylor Greene types coming out and saying anything that might tick you off. Because with every day that this thing was finally put together and about to go to vote, with every day they didn't vote on it, that meant a Representative Kustoff would come join a show like mine, and he would say things like, well, we couldn't really get all the way to eliminating Social Security taxes. And Mike Johnson is smart enough to know that's going to make you furious. And they don't have time. He's up against it. He set Memorial Day as a deadline, and he knows as soon as you get wind that they didn't quite cut Social Security the way you thought they were going to, and you start ringing up members of the House and saying, hey, you're my representative, and you said you were going to eliminate Social Security taxes. This isn't doing that. This bill sucks. Well, then all of a sudden they start getting enough calls from people like you and me. House Republicans start to get wobbly. Mike Johnson loses his core group of vote support, and it all falls apart. This is where Johnson's very clever. They got some stuff done late last night. They rushed to a full vote this morning, and the thing passed. Voila. And it's off Mike Johnson's shoulders now. And Mike Johnson, whatever you want to say about him, this shows his aptitude as a political figure that Kevin McCarthy didn't have, certainly Paul Ryan didn't have, John Boehner didn't have, Nancy Pelosi had it. But this guy's a surgeon. He knows how to operate. So from that perspective, I commend Johnson. This was passed by a whisker, but it got done. Now it heads to the Senate. What's Thune going to do? Thune says, Besant says, 4th of July. So we got a full, couple of weeks left of May. We got the whole month of June. And we have a big, beautiful bill on Trump's desk by the 4th of July. I don't know. But to the emailer's point a minute ago, Stigall, the guy said that you guys were talking yesterday about the Senate passing the no tax tippet. No tax. What was that? I'm sorry, G-Love. Do we have? Okay, let's go ahead and join Scalise then, because I want to join this stuff as soon as we can. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Steve. On November 5th, the American people rejected the failed policies of the Biden-Harris administration and overwhelmingly endorsed President Trump's America First agenda. Using his executive authority, President Trump hit the ground running on day one to deliver on the promises he made to the American people. Today, House Republicans followed suit. Our one big, beautiful bill fulfills the mandate for change we were given last November. It allows President Trump to continue his successful border security and deportation operations by investing in more Border Patrol agents and ICE officers, funding the continuation of the border wall, and equipping our men and women on the front lines with the tools they need to keep us safe. Not only will the one big, beautiful bill help to make America safe again, it will also help to make America wealthy again. America's economic revival has already begun under President Trump's leadership, but House Republicans back it up in this bill by making the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent, eliminating tax on tips and overtime, and throwing out regulations that burden American businesses and suffocate American innovation. From promoting the safety and security of our great nation and giving much needed tax relief to American families, to unleashing American energy and bringing accountability to important government programs, there are wins in this bill for every corner of America. Take this.
There are wins for every corner of America. That's some House leadership speaking. Of course, that's not Scalise, but it's one of the House leaders there. They're proud of what they did. Your reaction on the way. One thing that you ought to know about the big, beautiful bill that hasn't much been talked about, this came from the Federalist. On Sunday, the House voted 17-16, the House Budget Committee, 17-16, to advance Trump's one big, beautiful bill. We know that. But the Federalist reports it finally defunds big abortion. This was a little talked about item in the big, beautiful bill, as I understand it. No Medicaid dollars shall be used to make payments to a prohibited entity for items and services furnished during a 10-year period, the bill states. It defines a prohibited entity as any 501c3 charitable organization that is primarily engaged in family planning services, reproductive health, and related medical care. Also, the verbiage provides for abortions, and exceeded $1 million in Medicaid dollars in 2024. Planned Parenthood, our nation's largest provider of abortions, released its annual report on Monday, May 12th. The report shows exactly why this pro-life measure must remain in the final budget reconciliation bill. Planned Parenthood earned a stunning $206 million in profit. Their own budget numbers reveal they made as a business model, a 501c3, $206 million. And much of that is because of your tax dollars. And so in this big, beautiful bill, if you're looking for some things to feel good about, if you're frustrated that everything in it isn't in it the way you want it to be, one of the wins is it does apparently take Medicaid, your tax dollars, away from Planned Parenthood. Now, coming up in this show today, we are going to speak with Eric Burlison, who is one of the most hawkish guys in the House, and he has been studying this. I assume he voted well. According to the news story, there were only 2 Republicans that said no, and then 1 who voted present. Burlison voted to pass this bill. Burlison is one of the toughest Freedom Caucus hawkish budget guys there is. So we're going to ask him point blank, what's in this? What should people be happy about? What should people be unhappy about? What does he anticipate now that it's going to go over to the Senate? And remember, the Senate gets to slice and dice and do their Japanese steakhouse bit on this thing the House just passed, and then the two of them have got to get together, pass it again, and get it off to President Trump's desk. So there's still a hill to climb here, folks, and the Senate is known to be much more challenging in many ways than the House. And if the Senate botches this and does too much monkeying around with it, it'll tick the House off, and then we're all back to ground zero, that is. Quick break. Our telephone number, 855-STIGAL, if you want to get in here and react to any of this. 855-STIGAL. Okay, so the breaking news today is the big, beautiful bill. Danielle Alvarez is a senior advisor to the RNC. She's been watching this closely. Everyone's watching it closely. I suspect when the markets open, here's something I'll predict. Dangerous to predict markets, but I'm going to predict that the markets are going to go bonkers today in a good way. Trump said if this thing passes, go out and buy stock. So it's past one big hurdle. Johnson got it over the finish line. Impressive, but by a whisker. Danielle Alvarez, good morning from the RNC. Your opinion on this passage today?
Good morning. It's so great to be with you this morning, and especially on the heels of such wonderful breaking news. We have now made permanent President Trump's tax cuts from his first administration. The House just passed by a razor-thin margin, thanks to the leadership of President Trump, thanks to Speaker Johnson and Republicans. The big, beautiful bill, it is such a win for American workers, for American families, really for everyone across this country, as President Trump is now one step closer to delivering on his campaign promises of no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and, of course, making his border security permanent.
Here's the fact, and this is an indisputable fact, and you talk to anybody in money, in economic study, and they will all tell you, many of them have said it here, without the passage of this thing, without those tax cuts, if those tax cuts expired, right now, that's part of the secret sauce of Trump's economic agenda. If those tax cuts didn't happen in the new year, you're talking about market corrections of maybe 40 to 50% and the chance of a significant shock to the stock market in the next 6 to 12 months. Like this, for anybody that's watching their portfolios and have been nervous about it, the passage of this, no matter whether you like everything in it or not, these tax cuts had to happen, Danielle.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's why the Democrats continue to oppose President Trump. They don't want to see him have a win. I just wish that they understood that the American people deserve a win. I read recent polling that showed that over 80% of Americans want to make President Trump's tax cuts permanent. And by the way, that includes over 80% of independents and nearly 75% of Democrats. And it's exactly this type of good governance from Republicans, because remember, we received a mandate in November when we captured the House, we held on to the Senate, we won the White House, every single battleground state, captured the popular vote. It is exactly this type of good governance that we promised on the campaign trail and that will help us win in the upcoming midterm elections.
Danielle Alvarez with us. She's an RNC senior advisor. Okay, so look, nothing's ever perfect, and not everybody's going to get what they want or be happy with this. And here's the reality. Marjorie Taylor Greene visited with us yesterday and said something that a lot of people were not aware of. I can't say that I knew this. I understand it, but I don't think I knew it. She said, as chair of the DOJ committee, I said, in terms of cuts in this thing, she said, well, just to be clear, there are no DOJ cuts in this bill. And she said her verbiage was, DOJ cuts are not germane to this particular piece of legislation. This is a spending bill. Cuts need to be passed separately. Now, look, whatever anybody thinks about that, let's just talk about that for a second. This big, beautiful bill is critically important, as we've established. Do you have confidence that the Republicans will then go to work on DOJ cuts and other things? Because I think this audience, a lot of them who reached out to me yesterday, were crestfallen and frustrated that there weren't reductions in spending like they would have liked to have seen in this bill.
Well, and again, we have to remember what the alternative would have been with this bill. The alternative of not passing this big, beautiful bill would result in the largest tax hike on Americans in history. We couldn't have that. And there are some cuts. I will push back a little bit, right? We're going to protect Medicaid for Americans by removing 1.4 million illegal aliens. It kicks off those illegal immigrants off taxpayer-funded Medicaid benefits. We saw work requirements for Medicaid as well. So as President Trump said when he walked the halls of Congress, and he's a tremendous leader, I mean, went and has really engaged with members of Congress on, his priority legislation. He said 3 words: waste, fraud, and abuse. We're seeing the executive branch tackle that. We are seeing DOJ at the president's direction tackle that. Agencies cut waste, fraud, and abuse. He talked about that in the halls of Congress, and there are pieces of this bill that do address that. And I know that Republicans will continue to get to work to bring down spending. But all of this has to happen in conjunction. I mean, we're just over 100 days from the president being sworn in. He's pulling the levers to negotiate trade deals. He's pulling those tariff levers. He's pulling the levers of the economy, unleashing American energy, using executive orders to have wins for the American people. And, of course, he is our deal maker in chief. And we just saw this big, beautiful bill pass the House. It'll now go to the Senate, where we have to have a simple majority. So I'm really encouraged by what we are seeing from Republican leadership. And I think the Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is exactly right. We're going to see Republicans fight next to continue cutting waste, fraud, and abuse at the president's direction.
And again, Danielle Alvarez, I'm not attempting to be a rain cloud here, because I am thrilled that this bill passed the House. I will ask and follow up, because one of the things that we spoke about yesterday as well with another Republican member was the Social Security issue. A number of people were, I think, a little frosty over the idea that this was not a across-the-board permanent elimination of taxes on Social Security. There was a $4,000 deduction for earners $75,000 or less, and that was explained to us as the best they could do on the House side, because if to do anything else would require the Senate and 60 votes and procedure and blah, blah, blah. So bottom line, do you think more can be done there or will be done there? Because I think some people would suggest that was not a promise kept. The tips and the overtime were, but the Social Security wasn't. So I'm throwing it out there because that's what I heard a lot about. You tell me.
I think that we can always do more. But again, what we had to do in order to ensure that this bill would pass is make sure that every member of the House, and now we'll have to work on that in the Senate, and I know that Leader Thune is doing that good work right now, but make sure that every member of the House could go back home to their constituents and deliver a win. What you saw was a really transparent process. I mean, it's been covered nonstop. We've been seeing it play out in real time. In fact, it's so funny to me that some of the headlines you read is about discord in the Republican Party. It's because people are so used to hide the ball and the failures and the behind closed doors of Biden's failure of the last 4 years when Democrats were in control. What we saw is members fighting for every inch to make this bill better for their constituents. And what we saw is we ensured that there were permanent tax cuts and bigger paychecks. And I read a report that said that it meant an extra $5,000 in Americans' pockets with a double-digit % decrease to their tax bill. So that means that Americans earning between $30,000 and $80,000 will pay around 15% less in taxes. That helps our economy. That money then gets spent back into our economy on small and middle-sized businesses. That is a huge win for the American economy and for the American people.
A couple of points that really were of interest to me, and something that I know conservatives have pushed for a long time and are in this bill, as I understand it. They did effectively, actually for real this time, defund Planned Parenthood through dollars out of Washington. And that is to say, there will be no more Medicaid dollars, as I understand, coming out of Washington for Planned Parenthood. Is that your understanding that is still in this bill?
I actually was not aware of that. The one that I was aware of is that this big, beautiful bill prohibits Medicaid funding for gender transition procedures for minors, which I think is a huge win when you talk about. But if it did defund Planned Parenthood, I would be thrilled to know that. I don't think that our taxpayer dollars should be, and Americans agree. I mean, we've seen in polling after polling that taxpayer dollars should not be spent and force taxpayer dollars on funding abortions.
Yeah, I'm reading this from the Federalist, Danielle, so I don't quote me, but the Federalist said the House Budget Committee voted to advance the big, beautiful bill, of course, on Sunday. No Medicaid dollars shall be used to make payments to a prohibited entity for items and services furnished during a 10-year period, and then it lists out what Planned Parenthood does. So according to the Federalist, that is in this bill still, which is fascinating if so. Also in this bill, and it was just negotiated last night, Danielle, that Medicaid will now require work, proof that you're looking for work. It doesn't kick in until next year, 2026, but that's a far cry from where it was originally set, which was 2029.
And as you said, that was, one of the adjustments. As I mentioned previously, how proud I am that Republicans came together and worked on every detail and fought for every inch in this legislation. That's exactly right. There are now work requirements to receive Medicaid benefits. And the reality is that able-bodied individuals should work. I mean, this is supposed to be a hand up. It's not supposed to be, a permanent fixture. And so what we really want to do is make sure that able-bodied Americans have the ability to work. And, of course, we have compassion and make sure that we get them benefits and a hand up so they can get back on their feet. But I think that those requirements are something that were critical in helping this final passage, as I know that they were discussed late yesterday as we headed toward the House floor vote.
Danielle Alvarez is an RNC senior advisor. We were grateful she could make herself available to us on a busy breaking news morning. The House, by a whisker, gets this huge, big, beautiful bill of Trump's passed out of the House and now heads to the Senate. And I'm sure we'll talk again about what goes on over there. But thank you for your time this morning, Ms. Alvarez.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up After the top of the hour, we're going to talk with one of the most budget hawkish Republicans that I know of. His name's Eric Burlison. He voted for this thing. Is he happy about it, or did he have to hold his nose? That's on his way. Some other headlines. LaMonica McIver. Remember her? She's one of the ladies, one of the Democrats that bum-rushed the ICE detention facility in Newark. And now the DOJ is investigating her. And there's talk in the House that they would just completely boot her. Nancy Mace wants to expel LaMonica McIver from Congress after she was charged with assaulting 2 federal agents outside a migrant detention facility. Miss Mace announcing yesterday she filed a resolution to expel her, saying the New Jersey Democrat didn't just break the law, she attacked the very people who defend it. Attacking Homeland Security and ICE isn't just disgraceful, it's assault. If any other American did what she did, they'd be in handcuffs. McIver thinks being a member of Congress puts her above the law. It doesn't. She should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. As for her, well, she goes on TV yesterday and starts singing about it. I don't know what it is with these Democrats. They've got a song, apparently now, in their heart for everything when they're in trouble. Who was the last Democrat that sang? I'm trying to remember. Was it on The View or The Breakfast Club? Some crazy Democrat was singing. This isn't the first time they've done it. Anyway, here's here's some of McIver here. She went on, where'd it go? I thought I had this here right here. Yes, here it is. 2169, if you would, Paulie. A little song on the heart of Representative McIver.
You are now facing a federal charge, though. Are you afraid of what's going to transpire now?
You fight on, you fight on, you fight on, you fight on. When your government is doing you wrong, you fight on, oh, you fight on.
You know, I pride myself on being a professional, but I don't know exactly how I would react if I were that lady on CNN, an anchor, asking a legitimate question about a woman who may be booted from Congress who assaulted ICE agents, and she starts singing. This is the same song that another woman sang, and I don't remember. It was like last year. She was a Democrat, I think, in a primary. And if memory serves, she started bellowing this very same song when she was asked a question in a Democrat primary, because we played it here then, too. Democrats love it. Also reminds me of when that city count, one of my favorite Democrat song moments. Well, they sang on the steps this year already. I know they gathered together and sang on the steps. Chuck Schumer and the others. There was singing then. But my favorite Democrat song was the woman in, I think it was Seattle, a city council meeting a few years ago, who sang about the destruction of trees. I will give you this. Democrats are great with a songbook. They flout the law. They're lunatics. But, man, they carry a tune. And I suppose when all else fails, if you've got a song in your heart, isn't that great? Oh, Letitia James, by the way, very quickly, 2153. Letitia James in New York says, I didn't fraudulently fill out loan paperwork for a home. I just forgot where I lived.
As you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured a $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. The case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't forget where they live filling out mortgage loan paperwork? I want to welcome aboard the show our new sponsors at Texas Bullion Exchange. Great guys. If you go to buytexasgold.com, you will see my smiling mug right there at the top of the page. Since leaving the gold standard in 1971, the dollar has lost over 90% of its purchase power. Now, if you think about that, what used to cost $1 now takes $10 or more. That's pretty stunning. And if you think about gold, on the other hand, it's held strong. It's increased over 7,000%, as a matter of fact, in that very same window of time. So if you're holding a bunch of savings in cash, that's losing buying power by the day. Texas Bullion Exchange wants to help you diversify a portion of that wealth right now, roll over maybe an existing part of your IRA or the entire thing into physical gold and silver. And right now, for every $1,000 you diversify in gold with Texas Bullion Exchange, you'll get a free ounce of silver. Claim that free silver and learn more. That website again is buytexasgold.com. Be sure and mention my name, Chris, when you reach out to them, buytexasgold.com. Here's their number, okay? 855-839-2728. At Texas Bullion Exchange, the focus is on helping you preserve what you've worked so hard to build. Protect that wealth. Keep it safe from inflation. Tangible assets like gold and silver, not paper promises. That's what they can do for you. BuyTexasGold.com or call 855-839-2728. Be sure you mention Chris when you give him a ring.
Hey there, it's Chris Stigall. You know, this past summer, I went on a cruise with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Mike Gallagher, my Salem radio colleagues, and I met so many listeners like you who have been on my PhD weight loss program journeys, and I decided for myself it was time to jump in. I wanted to give this Dr. Ashley everybody's been talking about call myself. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team customize plans for your body to make weight loss simple, and they provide 80% of your food at no additional cost. They treat your whole person, and so I've decided to join so many of you. Join Sebastian Gorka, join Mike Gallagher, and all the weight they've lost, I'd like to do it myself. I've decided to call up my PhD weight loss. I hope you'll join me. Maybe we can start this weight loss journey together. Reach out, get started. Tell them I sent you and said hi. I'd love to hear how you're doing at 864-664-1900. That's 864-664-1900 or myphdweightloss.com. Don't forget to tell them Chris Stigall is going to start losing weight with you.
What a day. What a busy, busy day. Thanks for tuning in wherever you are across the country, listening on great Salem affiliate stations like The Patriot, 960 AM in Phoenix. Thank you for listening there. Thanks for watching on the Salem News Channel. Thanks for listening on the podcast at chrisstigall.com or wherever you stream podcasts. We got a lot of news to cover today. Overnight, the tragic news of 2 Israeli embassy staffers shot in cold blood by an anti-Semite chanting Free Palestine. Clearly, I shouldn't say clearly. I don't know this for a fact, but he's a 30-year-old named Elias Rodriguez of Chicago. So I have a very, very funny feeling that we're going to find that here's yet another homegrown domestic terrorist who probably comes out of this ideological cesspool of higher education that thinks that this is necessary and that he's a martyr for having done so. 2 young people, too, who were, as I understand it, engaged to be married. So that story we'll continue to cover and stay on top of, as well as the passage of the big, beautiful bill. Overnight, they were working to toy with it, make it a little better for members, and then they passed it with 1 vote to spare just a little while ago. We'll talk with Congressman Eric Burlison about it in just a second. But we're coming up here on Memorial Day weekend, and I know that this is a weekend that most of us like to kick back and relax, and I do hope you also, of course, what it's all about and why we really do Memorial Day is to give a pause to thank and pray and remember our servicemen and women, our fallen servicemen and women. And while we all do that, and oftentimes get to enjoy a long weekend like this, you know, kids who have a mom or a dad that are in prison, not a great weekend, not a great week, not a great life, generally speaking. They're stuck in these hot cities, many of them in really bad neighborhoods with drugs and gangs and the like. And so we have a chance to change all that. And one of the things that I love about working with the Salem Media Group and working with the Angel Tree camp folks, the prison ministry, prison fellowship folks, is this is an action item. It's something you can actually do. We spend a lot of time talking about things that frustrate us and are out of our control. Here's something you can actually do. Your donation can actually help one of these kids in these really tragic situations through no fault of their own with a parent in prison. You can get, for $200, you can send one of these kids to camp where they will be exposed to the gospel. You can be the hands and feet of Jesus. With a $200 donation, you can give one of these kids exposure to a Christ-centered camp for an entire week. Now, you don't have to give $200. If it's 5 or 10, that's fine. But I do hope you'll consider it, because this is going to make a real impact, not just in one child's future, but I believe in the future of the kingdom. I believe in the future of the country. When young people actually have that seed planted on their heart for Jesus. I've seen it work. You've probably seen it work in your own life. I've seen it with my kids when they've gone off to camp in the summer. Let's give some of these kids who, again, through no fault of their own, are up against it because they've got a parent in jail. And this is called the Angel Tree Camp, if you're not familiar with it. ChrisStigall.com. You can read more about it right now. And if you click on the banner at ChrisStigall.com, you give whatever you can give, but if you give $200, you can make it possible to send a kid to camp for an entire week. I'm personally trying to shoulder 455 kids to camp. That's what I'm trying to get done with your help. Can't do it without your help, of course. So we're on our way. We just launched it this week. I hope you can help. ChrisStigall.com. As I mentioned, $200, that sends one of these kids to camp for a whole week. But give what you can, okay? Don't want to hassle you about the amount. Your prayers are always welcome, of course. And you can call and donate today. 888-206-2794. 888-206-2794. All right, let's quickly go. Congressman Eric Burlison has been very, very patient, and I appreciate his waiting. He just cast a vote for the big, beautiful bill to head over to the Senate. And so, Congressman, I know you and I talked before this vote, and as the sausage was being made, you weren't terribly excited about it. Did it get any better? Good morning.
Good morning. There's always moments where you realize, when you're in the thick of it and you're trying to fight for as much as you possibly can get, and I think that you can easily become disappointed by what you didn't get and focused on what you didn't get, as opposed to focus on what you did get. And so, when you take a step back and reflect on where the bill is, at the end of the day, this is a massive extension of the tax cuts. I mean, it makes the Trump tax cuts permanent, adds more tax cuts. It adds more tax deductions. Some of them I don't agree with, like the SALT deduction, increasing that. But at the end of the day, it's a massive, massive reduction in funds coming to the federal government. And frankly, as someone who thinks that the federal government mismanages taxpayer funds, the less that we get, the better. Starve the beast, if you will. And so
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene told us yesterday, and I guess I didn't know it one way or the other. When everybody's talking about DOJ cuts, she said that's not germane to this. That was never the thing. She said, but we've got to push to do that regularly. She said she'd like to see daily votes on DOJ cuts. Do you believe you guys are going to be able to come back once this thing is off your plates and we're done talking about Trump tax cuts and the big, beautiful bill? Do you think you guys have the moxie to go back and start chipping away, sawing away at DOJ cuts?
I don't know that we do. I mean, I think that we can try, but I will tell you, some of the cuts that we tried to get, the spending cuts that we tried to get in this bill, is where we ran into some walls, because we had a lot of our more moderate members that pushed back. For example, we tried to reform do some reforms in Medicaid, because there's a lot of fraud that's happening. The states are manipulating the system. They're taxing. They've got like this shell game where they tax a managed care company for the same amount that they reimburse them, and so then the state then goes to the federal government and says, "Look, we just paid them that much money," and they draw down federal dollars. We tried to close that loophole. The moderates stopped us. We tried to close the green new scam tax credits, including the ones that are really bad, like carbon sequestration credits, which is just a stupid concept. And yet we weren't able to get that because look, I mean, it's like this town at the end of the day is still a swamp, and there's swampy people here, and that are beholden to lobbyists and special interests, and even in a big beautiful bill, we had a very hard time getting some of those cuts in there. But taking a step back, I mean, I have to recognize that we did get get quite a bit done. I mean, we did get.
Could I ask you, Congressman, quickly about, just because a lot of people have asked me about it, and I want to give you the opportunity to clarify what it is or isn't. The Social Security thing. I got a lot of complaints yesterday. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, great, but you promised no tax on Social Security, and it's still there. We just get a $4,000 deduction. I know you've heard that too. So what do you say about that?
I say that the reason why we couldn't accomplish that is because the New Yorkers, the SALT caucus, they demanded that if they were going to vote for this bill, and leadership caved to them, and so we ended up raising the SALT tax deduction, which benefits rich blue states. But so I'm as frustrated as anybody. I would have rather give that tax cut to seniors. But if you're looking for somebody to blame the New Yorkers. So
you're saying, just so I'm clear, we talked with a congressman from Tennessee yesterday who said procedurally that couldn't get through the Senate without 60 votes, and that it was a separate kind of budgetary item. So is that not the case?
Oh, the no tax on Social Security? I think it probably would. In fact, I'm hopeful that the Senate, because the Republicans in the Senate have no desire for changing SALT, and it's my hope that they take all the SALT deductions and then they erase that and give it to seniors in a cut on Social Security. The problem that we have in the House that they don't have in the Senate is we have like a 3-seat majority, and 6 or 7 of them are New Yorkers alone, and so that was the problem that we had.
You've been up very, very late. I know you're exhausted, and I hate even asking it. And if you say no, that's fine. I respect it and understand it. Is there any way I could hold you through the break for a couple more questions, or do you need to run?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Okay. I appreciate it, because I want to talk a little bit of procedure with you and kind of walk folks through this so everybody understands what's coming. And I know you're candid and honest, and Eric Burlison joins us on the phone today from Washington, D.C., where the news is, by one vote, the big, beautiful bill has passed out of the House. Eric Burlison was one of those yay votes, casting in the affirmative, yes, to help it pass. So what now? He's actually optimistic, he says, about what some folks in the Senate could do. And that's what I want to get into next. So I'll let you know in advance, Congressman Burlison. My next question for you is, do you think Thune and the Senate Republicans could actually improve upon this? Or could they monkey around with it and tick some of you guys off in the House and cause it to fall apart? It's precarious. The deadline, we're told, for them is July 4th. That's a month and some change. So the permanent tax cuts are the most important thing. I think everyone agrees with that. More on this with Congressman Eric Burlison in just a moment on the Chris Stigall Show. Congressman Eric Burlison is back with us after a very, very late night, staying up all night and staying with us this morning after the big, beautiful bill has passed the House. So, sir, I asked you procedurally now, what do you think happens on the Senate side, if you could?
Yeah, I mean, if you count on the rhetoric of the Senate, it's going to get better. The Senate says that they're recognizing that the moment that the House kind of like right as we were approaching the end, the Moody's bond rating was reduced, and there became a lot more cries for spending cuts, which is something that I'm all for, and we tried to get done. The Senate claims that they're going to go further. They're going to cut spending more, and I hope they do. I pray that they
Which
do.
is kind of amazing, Congressman. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of funny because where this started was the Senate didn't want to come anywhere near the aggressive cuts you guys wanted to make. True? They've changed their tune?
I think that their rhetoric is. This is where I'm going to go with this. Their rhetoric is different than what they actually do. So the history will show. I mean, bills that go to the Senate always come back a little bit more moderate. And so that's what, if I had to put money down and bet, I'd say it's probably going to come back watered down. But if the Senate sticks to what their rhetoric is, it's going to come back better. And that would be fantastic. So who knows?
This bill you just helped pass this morning, as I understand it, terminates a lot of the Green New Scam. It increases Medicaid work requirements to kick in next year. It bars gender-affirming care. funding that stuff, and it also defunds Planned Parenthood. True?
Yeah, those are huge pieces, and that's why there's moments where you're in the fight and you're in the trenches and you're really trying to get everything you possibly can, and you forget about the things that you banked. You forget about the wins, if that makes sense. And so early on, we had banked in this bill a lot of those wins. The blocking funding for gender affirming care and for Planned Parenthood, and so those were all huge wins. And then we got work requirements for food stamps and Medicaid for the able-bodied populations. These are huge wins, and so repealing a ton of the green new scam tax credits and especially the EV mandate, which was just garbage. But I think that one thing that's probably not going to be talked about the most, that will probably juice the economy more than anything, is all of the deregulations that we're doing for the energy sector and the permitting sector. So,
Amen.
And so that will really unleash a lot of economic growth. And and that's really the only way we're going to grow out of this debt situation.
Energy is key to all of it. You're exactly right. I think the markets will probably react when they open very favorably. We know a couple of those moderates over there in the Senate, the Murkowski types, the Collins types. Could you imagine that they'll push back and try to take out what you guys have eliminated by way of Planned Parenthood and gender-affirming care? I can see a couple of them going wobbly.
Yeah,
they will.
I know they're going to try. They will absolutely try to strip a lot of that stuff out. Hopefully, Thune holds firm and the Senate holds firm, and your listeners call and put a lot of pressure on them to keep it in.
So the Senate you can confirm this, if they want, they can make this better. They can make the Social Security thing better if people are unhappy with what you guys on the House side did. Senate can still step up and do more.
They can absolutely do that. I just don't know that they've got it in them to do it.
And then it would have to, then we have what we call reconciliation, right? Where their version and your version have to come together and all of you have to agree?
Yeah, yes. Once they pass their version, we would need to adopt the final product, or we could amend it.
And that's another vote.
Back, yeah, or go to conference. Yeah. But at the end of the day, yeah, this is going to come back to the House. Hopefully, it comes back to us in a better form, and they don't water this bill down.
Well, Congressman, you have been so open with us and candid and available through the whole process. I know you're exhausted. I hope you get some sleep. And I would love for you to come back as we sift through what the Senate's up to, because you've got a sharp eye on this stuff and you help us understand it easily. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great day.
That's Congressman Eric Burlison. He represents the 7th District of Missouri. A great representative for the folks there. 855 Stigall is our telephone number. We got a lot of headlines to get to as well, and we will do that right after this. 855 Stigall if you want to get in here. Thanks for being a part of the show today. I'm grateful. One of the most extraordinary things we've seen yet, and that is, again, a very high bar to clear, but the Trump administration continues to absolutely drop my jaw. Would you ever, in a million years, imagine that a United States president, never mind a Republican president, because Republican presidents have always been very buttoned up, and gentlemanly. And most Republican presidential candidates are too gentlemanly to ever do what Donald Trump just did yesterday. You talk about a good old-fashioned bait-and-switch rope-a-dope pantsing. This was brilliant. He drags in the South African president, Ramaphosa, and makes him sit there in the office with him, with all the press gathered around, and then he rolls footage of the white genocide and the members of his parliament that are calling for white genocide. Trump calls this guy out to his face while sitting there with him in the White House. I've never seen anything like it. It was extraordinary. I don't have time to play the full video of these members of parliament leading chants of death for white farmers. Here's some of Trump confronting this South African president yesterday. 21:58. Take a listen to this.
Let me clarify that, because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one,
That is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No,
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now been utilizing.
The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off. They died violently. And we're here to talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here, but I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news totally, one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible, but if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it, but the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it, but they won't.
This is why Donald Trump is president. Everyone who is sane and understands what is truth and justice understands that this guy had the fortitude to call this South African president right there, call him out in front of everybody and say, you're lying. White farmers are dying. They're being murdered. In many cases, they're being encouraged by members of your government, and you're doing nothing about it. And he's sitting there humming, making excuses. Trump is sitting there by himself on his home turf, prosecuting the South African president to his face and the media in the room. This is as badass as it gets, ladies and gentlemen. This is why he's my president. This is why I have a picture framed and hanging on my office wall of shaking that man's hand, because I don't believe I've ever seen or will ever see another man leading this country like Donald Trump. That's right. He's leading like a man. He's staring down these vicious liars, both in the press and these leaders from South Africa who are targeting people for their race, and he's calling them out to their face like a man. The brass button set in the Republican Party for too long has said, that's not very diplomatic. You have these conversations in private. Same deal with Ukraine. Remember when he had that little twerpy Ukrainian president, Zelensky, in there? Dressed him down, said, take a hike, get the hell out of here. And then saw him again at the Vatican and said, come over here. Pulls up a chair, and it looks like he's coaching a basketball game. This guy is just straight up masculinity at a time this country desperately needs it, and I love it. I love it. Now, what was he so ticked off about NBC? I'll tell you. If you didn't hear it, Peter Alexander, who is the White House correspondent for NBC, while Trump has just shown evidence of white farmers being targeted, he's shown overwhelming evidence that members of parliament in South Africa openly lead huge, massive crowds in cheering and chanting for the murder of whites. Trump has displayed all of this for all the media to consume. Peter Alexander comes up with 2161 here, Paulie. Here's when he gets the opportunity to ask questions after that video rolls. Here's what Peter Alexander says.
The Pentagon announced it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing. They also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back. You ought to go back to your studio at NBC because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead.
That's good. That's good. That's enough. That's enough. Now, over at PBS, this is how loathsome these people are. All right? They are eager to just completely ignore the story and disregard the case that Trump is making directly to the South African president. You have members of your own government who are calling for the assassination, the murder of whites and white farmers, and it's happening. PBS posts yesterday on X, white farmers have been murdered in South Africa, but those murders account for less than 1%. Oh, well, I mean... And I said on X, that tone, that post, you know what that reminds me of? When Whoopi Goldberg was defending Roman Polanski, the pedophile director from Hollywood that ran off to France so he couldn't be prosecuted for his child sex. And because she's of the Hollywood elite types, she says, well, I don't know. It was a consensual relationship. It wasn't like, there's rape and then there's rape. Whoopi famously said on her show once, there's rape and then there's rape. PBS says, well, there's murdering whites and then there's murdering whites. It's just 1%. It's sick. And they are actually working diligently over at MSNBC to try to completely disprove that this is even a story at all, that whites are being targeted. More of this machismo. I just love it. It's rubbed off on little Marco Rubio, 2165. This guy's been a star. Take a listen to him with this Congresswoman Jaya Paul, 2165.
Student was a guest in the United States on a student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa.
So you revoked her student visa based on an op-ed which trumps the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
Someone's coming up here to stir up problems on our campus. We're going to revoke their visa.
She didn't do any of that. She wrote an op-ed.
Well,
she wrote an op-ed, and I'm talking to you about her particular case.
Claims and your claims. Those are not the facts.
You reclaiming my time. You revoked her student visa because she wrote an op-ed.
And we'll do more. We're going to do more. We will revoke the visa of anyone who's in this country as a guest who's here to stir up trouble.
Are you going to revoke the visa of somebody who made that?
The case. I'll look at it. I'm looking to get crazy people out of our country.
Actually, it's not just about revoking. You actually, Secretary Rubio, excuse me, reclaiming my time. If these are legitimate law enforcement agents carrying out proper arrest, why are they hiding their identities?
Because then radical crazies will try to hurt them.
Yeah, I did. And I'm going to do more, by the way, lady. Sorry you don't like it, but it's going to happen because I can. So, how you like them apples? I just love this tone. I love it. Lee Zeldin did it too. I'm going to have some of that for you coming up. Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator. Is this not the most fabulous cabinet ever assembled? I'm sorry, these people just excite the hell out of me. Every last one of them will sit down and stare a member of the media or some hostile Democrat right in the face and go, damn straight, we threw the bum out. And I do it twice again on Sunday if given the opportunity. And I don't make apologies, and we're going to do more, and ain't nobody going to stop me because the executive branch can do it. So how you like that? I just love this. This is what this country needs at this moment in history. This is the Stigall Show. We played for you Rubio. We played for you Trump. Lee Zeldin, 2167 here if you would, Paulie. He squares off yesterday with Sheldon Whitehouse, who is one of the most insufferable Democrats in the Senate by a lot. Just really one of the worst. And Lee Zeldin, having none of it. The fight is basically over. The timing of how and when Lee Zeldin looked over grants and terminated grants from the Biden administration. And the senator is trying to get him caught up in this semantics argument about who was reading over and reviewing the grants and who signed off on it. And Zeldin is having none of it. Listen.
You stated during your
House E&C hearing that you personally reviewed all these grants. Here's what you said. I was the one who made the decision. And I made the decision after doing individual review. I personally reviewed every single grant that I canceled. Now, you guys are going to have to start getting your stories straight, because there are 3 completely different statements, and they cannot all be true. It cannot be that Voiles personally himself conducted the review of 781.
He did.
And that Coogan saw to it that it was individually done.
Others did. It's a crazy concept, Senator, but maybe more than one person was individually reviewing these grants. Maybe they were working on it for more than one day, Senator. Have you thought about that concept? What about the fact that
their testimony is that they did it all on one day? No, I do not.
Every single time.
I do not agree with that, Administrator.
Senator.
He swore in court that he did it on one day. So you can't now come in and say that that's false.
On a day after you worked on it, busting your ass for a while to get all of your ducks lined up,
that's
to
not
do
what
all
he
the
said.
research, to ask questions, to make sure you're making responsible decisions.
None of that is what he said.
Because they're not worried that there's going to be some ranking member at the
None of that is what he said.
Who doesn't care about the facts.
None of that is what he said. I'm using the facts as your employee stated them.
That's good. So this goes on. Zeldin's just a badass in this whole thing, and please go watch this. It's so entertaining. Zeldin just makes mincemeat of this pompous windbag, Sheldon Whitehouse, and what he goes on to say is, you don't even care about why we canceled the grant, do you? You don't even care that taxpayers' money was being fraudulently spent. You don't even care what we found. You want to argue about semantics of who reviewed the grant and what timetable was used to cancel it. You don't care what's in it. You won't talk about what's in it. You just want to talk about semantics. It was brilliant. Also brilliant. Our Vice President, J.D. Vance, squares off with the New York Times, 2155. Take a listen to this.
You cannot have a country where the American people keep on electing immigration enforcement, and the courts tell the American people they're not allowed to have what they voted for. And that's where we are right now. We're going to keep working it through the immigration court process, through the Supreme Court as much as possible. And look, success to me is not so much a number, though obviously I'd love to see the gross majority of the illegal immigrants who came in under Biden deported. That actually is a secondary metric of success. Success to me is that we have established a set of rules and principles that the courts are comfortable with, and that we have the infrastructure to do that allows us to deport large numbers of illegal aliens when large numbers of illegal aliens come into the country. That to me is real success.
And by the way, I don't have time to get into it, but Harmeet Dillon has a Wall Street Journal editorial today, An End to Biden Injustice Against Police. Harmeet Dillon is doing amazing things at DOJ, the Civil Rights Division or whatever. She is a star. So I shouldn't say that it's just men being men. It's women being tough and principled and being women too. But my point is, these are tough people. Harmeet just did an interview with Tucker. She was brilliant. It's just for the first time seeing an administration on offense. It's fantastic. It's fantastic, and it's all being led by the big dog himself, Donald Trump, who stared down this South African president who sat there and lied to his face while Trump presented evidence that whites are being exterminated in South Africa, and he's good with it, and he's allowing it to happen right under his nose. And you know what Axios wrote about that? Here's the headline this morning after that confrontation. Trump's Oval Office is a danger zone for world leaders. Trump's Oval Office is a danger zone for world leaders. A danger zone? More so than white farmers in South Africa, Axios? See, he's changed the game. The rules of the game have been completely blown up thanks to the Trump administration. Gone are the days of the polite cologne and cufflink dinners where world leaders who are abusing and taking advantage of Americans, taxpayers, and their fellow citizens. Gone are the days they come here and get the royal treatment and don't get called out for their misdeeds. Those days are gone. And not a shot has been fired, I mind you. He's drawing down militarily. He's taking shots in person. It's sexy as hell. I'll see you tomorrow. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.